Greetings, everyone, and thank you once again for stopping by the Infidel Guy audio show, the place where we examine religion, eradicate pseudoscience, and support our fellow free thinkers. Tonight, we have a special guest. His name is Rob Sherman. Rob Sherman is one of the best-known and most effective civic activists in the Midwest. Rob Sherman is a member of the Chicago Tribune A-list, and I'm sure he'll tell us about that. As one of the 12 most influential movers and shakers in the Chicago suburbs, he publishes liberal news and commentary at robsherman.com, hosted the Afternoon Drive radio talk show on AM 1530 WJJG, and previously broadcasted at AM 1330 WKTA.
Right.
And he also hosts a television talk show, and also is a founder of National Atheist. And I guess he also speaks to houses of worship, and this is going to be quite interesting to hear his story. Rob Sherman, welcome to the show.
Hey, little guy, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you on. I see you're pretty busy.
Yeah, I keep busy, and who knows which responsibility, which task to take care of first. I try to keep them all going at one time with liberal news and commentary and National Atheists and the TV show and the travel agency. Oh, I ought to put that in the bio, too, about the Rob Sherman Travel Agency. Free plug. Hello,
wow.
Atheists. Atheist Tours of the Holy Land. I'll tell you where to go before you tell me where to go, right?
Right.
All right.
Well, you said you're a member of the Chicago Tribune A-list.
Oh, that was an article that the Tribune ran something like 2 to 3 years ago,
okay,
where they picked out the 12 most influential movers and shakers in the Chicagoland area, and they had several mayors, several leaders of business, and there I was. And if you go to Infidel Guy's website, infidelguy.com, and go to that homepage there, click on the bio that you've got there for me.
Yeah,
Chicago Tribune A-list. Let's see if that works, because I'm in front of the computer, and I just clicked on it, and there it is. There's that, I think that's a JPEG type file. No, it's a GIF file, a GIF file of the Chicago Tribune article where it says on the A-list. If you scroll down and you scroll across, all the way there at the bottom, it says, Rob Sherman, atheist activist, by filing or just threatening lawsuits, Sherman has forced officials throughout the suburbs to move religious images and phrases from city seals, towers, and government centers. And maybe that's the point where we should start our conversation, because every community throughout the nation needs somebody like me to stand up for state-church separation, to be vigilant, to be the watchdog. And if you see a violation of state-church separation, don't just be weak and docile and say, hey, it's not my fault, it's not my problem. It is your problem, because these things are like a cancer. You need to stomp it out before it grows and spreads and infects the entire metropolitan area.
Mm-hmm. And someone like you, okay, what have you done?
Well, wherever I have come across state church separation violations throughout the Chicago area, I have gone to the government officials, often in behalf of residents of those communities, and asked them to review the constitutionality of a continuation of that practice. And I suggest to them that they can end the state church separation violation without a lawsuit, or they can end it with a lawsuit, but either way, they're going to have to either take that cross off the city seal or take the nativity scene down from in front of their municipal hall, or take the cross off of the building, the city hall building.
Right.
A lot of different issues. I've challenged the inclusion of, I've challenged the law in Illinois that requires atheist public elementary school students to say that there is a God at the beginning of each school day in the Pledge of Allegiance. So there have been a lot of issues. I've challenged the practice of having public schools recruiting for the Boy Scouts and for the Cub Scouts. The Supreme Court, as we activists all know, said earlier this year that the Boy Scouts can exclude from membership, gays and atheists, but that still leaves in place a requirement that the government cannot advance a discriminatory purpose. So the government cannot use its tax dollars or employees to aid the Boy Scouts or the Cub Scouts in recruiting its members. So I've challenged those things. Those are the types of things that I've dealt with.
But how are they getting around? I mean, how are they getting away with this?
Simple. They defy it. They defy the laws. They try and make us because they know that in order to stop them, if they refuse to comply voluntarily, you have to take them to court. In order to take them to court, you have to find an attorney. And in order to obtain an attorney, most of the time you have to come up with the big bucks. So they figure, well, it's only illegal if somebody complains, and it's only illegal if somebody has the wherewithal, has the means to secure an attorney, to secure a competent attorney, and to pay for that attorney. And they figure, well, either you won't be able to find an attorney who's willing to take on God or Jesus, or you won't be able to come up with the money, or you'll get tired and you'll give up and you'll figure it's too much trouble. Well, in the Chicago area, they found out that I'm real persistent. I don't quit. I don't give up. I don't get tired. I keep doing it over and over and over until the job gets done.
And many of us, unfortunately, free-thinking people do give up.
That's how I got on the A-list, because I'm not a quitter. You know, there are a lot of atheists in this country who will write letters to the editor, and those are the kinds of atheists that, and that's important. There's no doubt about it, that's important. But that shouldn't be the last step. That should be only the first step. Because if you're the kind of atheist who will merely write a letter to the editor when you see a state church separation violation, not do anything about it, well, government doesn't care about that.
That's
You do that, fine. Who cares? It's like sticks and stones. You could write letters, but they're going to, drive through with putting their crosses on the water towers or the city seals. Or engage in other state church separation violations or violate the rights of atheists. And if you're not going to do something about it, well, then you're a passive atheist. I'm an atheist activist.
Wow. Speaking of those crosses, even here in a courtroom here in Atlanta, they kind of disguise the crosses within the woodwork.
What are you doing about it?
Well, they've done it in a way in which it could go either way. It's really weird the way they sneaked it on in there, but they've managed to put it in there. But
well, then you need to do something about it. If you have looked at that Tribune A-list article, if you've linked to it from my website, where it talks about how I've forced officials throughout the suburbs to remove religious images from, among other places, government centers, the Kane County Government Center. Well, Kane County is located 50 miles west of Chicago. It's 2 counties west of Cook County. Chicago's in Cook County, west of that is DuPage County, and then west of that along the Fox River is Kane County. The government of Kane County purchased a property of a number of acres that used to be Sacred Heart Seminary, which is fine. Sacred Heart moved out of the place. The nuns or the sisters, or whatever they call themselves, they moved out. They put their property up for sale. And the government of Kane County decided to buy that for their municipal center, for their government center. And that's fine. But the government decided to not take down the emblems, the trademarks of the former owner of the property. So you go into one building, and it would say, county clerk's office, pay taxes here, and above the door was a 2-story high Christian cross. You go into the county boardroom. Well, where do they put the county boardroom? In the former sanctuary, the former chapel. And where does the audience sit? Well, they sit in the church pews. And what's carved in the ends of the church pews? These big old wooden Christian crosses. Well, I went there and suggested that they review the constitutionality of keeping these crosses and grottos. You know what a grotto is? A little nativity scene in a little wooden stone type of structure.
Yes.
They left that up there. I challenged the constitutionality. I asked them to review the constitutionality of the continuation of that practice, And after about a year, the state's attorney of Kane County determined that, guess what, it's unconstitutional, and the county board voted to allocate funds from next year's budget, from the following year's budget, to either have the crosses removed or the grottos removed where it could be, and where they couldn't be removed, to cover them over with something else. So where they had the cross above the front door of the county clerk's office, which was a separate building on this multi-building campus. Well, the cross was, it was like concrete or masonry. It was in the brickwork type thing. So they merely put a sign, Kane County shield, a Kane County sign, logo sign over the cross. That's fine. I'm not looking for them to deconstruct the building, take the crosses out and put in new bricks. That's a little extreme. They covered it up. It's gone. You don't see it. Fine. Same thing with the church pews. They put the logos of the county over the crosses, and that's fine. Everybody knows this place used to be a church. It used to be a nunnery, or if that's the right term. You know what I'm talking about. Seminary. That's the term. And people know that. And now it's being readapted. It's recycled for government use. That's fine. That's okay to do. But you put up the government logos rather than keeping up the logos of the former owner of the property. And that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of persistence.
Wow, so it is possible, and that's what our listeners need to hear, is that there is a way to take care of these things, and I'm glad to see you, Rob.
Most people are not experts in how to go about this, how to pursue it. That's why I formed National Atheists. If you would like to have somebody, I don't want to denigrate anybody, if you want somebody to hold your hand or to train you or to explain to you the systems and the process, and be there so that you can, if they throw a curveball at you, how to respond. That's what National Atheists is all about. I've got a website, nationalatheists.org, or just click on robsherman.com and, send me email, send me, or call me on the phone. The phone number for National Atheists is 847-870-1200, and all that stuff is on my website, or call me directly in my office at 870-0700 in the 847 area code. Again, all that stuff you can find at robsherman.com. I am there to assist you, to help you, those of you in the audience, in challenging these state church separation violations. If we end up stuck with with George D.W.I. Bush as the next president, there's going to be an all-out war against state church separation.
That's right.
And we're going to have our hands full, and we're going to need atheist activists throughout the nation. There are other organizations out there that, very nice people, and they like to publish things about atheism, and they like to talk about atheism and issue news releases and press releases, and that's fine to educate people about the subject of atheism. But if you want an activist, if you want an activist organization, an organization that does things for state church separation, an organization that gives awards for doing things about state church separation instead of giving awards for writing letters to the editor, then you want National Atheists.
Wow. Well, how long has National Atheists been in existence, and what are you...
National Atheists was formed earlier this year.
Okay. And what is it doing as of now? Is it...
Well, the most recent big holy war that we engaged in was in Lake Zurich, Illinois, which is located about 40 miles northwest of downtown Chicago and about 5 miles northwest of where I live in Buffalo Grove, Illinois. Lake Zurich is about 25 miles west of Lake Michigan and maybe 20 miles south of the Illinois-Wisconsin border, if you have some better coordinates on that.
Okay.
The sophomore football coach at Lake Zurich's public high school had been leading the team in prayer before the game and after the game. I received a phone call from a resident of Lake Zurich who said that he's 26 years old and his little brother is a member of the sophomore football team, and his little brother isn't happy because he gets up at 5:30 every morning to work out with the team, but the only time he gets to interact with his teammates out on the field is in the post-game prayer led by the coach. And he said, I want to play with my teammates, not pray with them.
Right,
Besides, the coach shouldn't even be leading the team in prayer. This is a public school. He shouldn't be doing that. So he asked me to get involved in bringing the Constitution to Lake Zurich and its high school, which, of course, I did. And it was all over the front pages of the newspaper. It was in liberal news and commentary for, several weeks there, about a month. Bottom line is that I contacted the principal and the superintendent of the high school and asked them to review the constitutionality of the continuation of that practice. Well, they contacted the school district's attorney, and as soon as the school district's attorney heard the name Rob Sherman, they said, oh, my God, you got to stop this. We'll get sued.
Wow.
And sure enough, within 3 days, it used to take 7 years to accomplish these things, but because of my reputation, because they know that I'm really going to follow through, and I know my stuff, and I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it, they took care of this problem within 3 days, and there was all kinds of screaming and gnashing of teeth and all that kind of stuff by the students saying, oh, Rob Sherman's stopping us from praying. Well, they can pray all they want. You just can't have the coach, the government employee, leading children in prayer as a part of his official duties.
Wow. That's great to hear. You have me a little concerned here when you mentioned Bush, once he takes office, what's going to occur. You mentioned some things about what we can do. I really want to know more about what, you have my support. I think I'm willing to join National Atheist today, this evening. What more? What can the individual do? Well, I tell you, you mentioned writing letters, and that's mostly what everyone does that I know.
Right, and that doesn't do a damn bit of good.
Wow.
It's whining. It informs the public. Okay, it's informative, but you have to be willing to back it up with action. It's a threat without action. And instead of writing letters complaining about what government does improper, or like another organization does, they issue news releases saying, we object to, we condemn or we criticize a particular government official for doing this or that. What we need to do, what National Atheist does, is we get in contact with these government officials. We don't do news releases. We make news. We contact the government officials. We confront them. Now, that doesn't mean we confront them like you saw on TV, where you have the Republicans confronting the Dade County canvassing board and, shouting them down so they couldn't do their work and count the ballots. When I say confront them, that means in a civil, polite, but firm, a pleasant but firm manner where we contact them by phone, go to a city council meeting or a school board meeting and say, standard problem-solving tactics, effective problem-solving tactics. Here's what the problem is as we see it. Here's why it's a problem. Here's what we propose you do about it. And we ask that you implement our solution. And if you do, we won't sue your ass. If you don't, we will.
One other question here from Melcor in New Mexico. What do you think?
New Mexico.
What do you think about American Atheists?
Well, as I indicated, they are a fine organization. A lot of my friends are there. I was the national spokesman of American Atheists for many years, and I was an activist. I have formed my own organization because I feel that there is a need for two different kinds of organizations. If you're interested in learning about atheism, if you're interested in the, atheism group therapy, they're a wonderful organization. If you want an organization that is going to be an activist organization that's going to do something about atheism, about civil rights for atheists, well, I'd like you to consider National Atheists. So I don't want to say anything bad about National Atheists. I want to talk about what's right about National Atheists. They do a lot of things right. They do a lot of good things. I do things, National Atheist does things that I feel that American Atheist doesn't do or doesn't do enough of. So I will never, ever say anything negative about American Atheists. I'll tell you what American Atheist does right. I'll tell you what I like about them. National Atheist does things in addition, or let me rephrase that. National Atheist does other things than what American Atheist does, and National Atheist does more of certain things, of the activist type things. That the focus of National Atheist is on the activism, while the focus of American Atheist is on publishing and education.
Okay. Well, the second part of that question, which I think National Atheist probably does, is but he says, well, how can atheists do any real good when there are so many small groups? Why can't we all just come under one coalition, like the Christian Coalition? What do you think? Do you think that's a good idea? Should we all really combine our efforts? But instead, we have all these small groups, kind of like a bunch of ants picking away at a piece of meat. Shouldn't we, gather ourselves, conglomerate ourselves, and try to do more that way? Or
you would think so, but in fact, there is a good and valid reason for different groups to exist. There's a good and valid reason for American Atheists to exist, in addition to National Atheists, or vice versa. And here's that reason. Not everybody wants to be Rob Sherman. Not everybody wants to be an activist. There are a lot of atheists. As a matter of fact, most atheists are convinced that God is make-believe. They are sure of their opinion about theology, but they don't want to stand on the street. They don't want to go to a village board meeting or a city council meeting and challenge state church separation violations. So if you're the kind of an atheist who is interested in social interaction amongst atheists, if you're the kind of atheist that is interested in reading about atheist philosophy, there are certain organizations that focus on those types of areas. If you're the kind of atheist who is interested in civil rights for atheists, then there are other organizations. There are some organizations that combine the two. There are some that focus on one area. There are some that focus on another area. So, of the various atheist organizations that are out there, of which National Atheist is one, American Atheist is another, and there are others, of those various organizations, every single one of them is a good organization. Every single one of them, I can tell you things that are right with them, and I refuse to say anything that's wrong with them or bad about them. I focus on the positive. So if anybody thinks, well, I left American Atheists, I formed National Atheists, and you should join National Atheists and leave American Atheists because American Atheists is bad, that's not what I'm saying.
But you just
I want to
else.
expand the market. I want to bring in new people and new money. If you've been donating money to American Atheists, you should continue to do that. Don't send me your money. I want to find new people. I want to find new blood and new people to join the process. And if you've been sitting on the sidelines and you're interested in reading about atheist philosophy, you ought to join American Atheists. If, however, you've been sitting on the sideline and what you really want to do is be an atheist civil rights activist, you want to join National Atheists.
That's great. Fran asked, from Atlanta, she asked,
Hi, Fran.
How dangerous is activism?
Oh, it's very dangerous. I've been getting death threats for 20 years, and that's another very good and valid reason why many people, it's a good and valid reason why most atheists don't get involved in activism. I have engaged in a variety of security measures. For security reasons, I won't tell you what the nature of those security measures are. I'll merely state that there are multiple levels of security that I have implemented in order to protect myself and my family. And apparently those security measures have been adequate because they haven't killed me yet. I expect, don't be surprised if someday I'm assassinated. That's what happens to many good civil rights activists. It happened to Kennedy, it happened to King, and it happened to Kennedy. That's John and that's Robert. It's happened to many other civil rights activists. As a matter of fact, my Christian friends tell me, hey, it happened to Jesus. I'm convinced that God is make-believe and that Jesus never existed, but, there are some of my Christian friends who can relate to what I'm doing because they say, hey, same thing happened to Jesus. They got Jesus, and we wouldn't be surprised if they get you. And I said, you're right.
Rob, you just scared the hell out of my guests. You know that, right?
I didn't hear you.
You just scared the hell out of my guests. Out of my listeners. You know that, right?
Well, it depends. This is not for the timid. Mm-hmm. Being an activist is, if you are timid, go join American Atheists. Or if you are timid, join National Atheists and provide us with the financial wherewithal to hire those attorneys so that we can be a credible threat to those who those government officials who will use their position in government for a conflict of interest. They will use their position in government to promote Christianity.
Pat Robertson has been mentioned. He's always doing something against trying to cease the separation of church and state. Are there any particular groups that you're aware of that keeps an eye on him and monitors what he does, or is trying to fight him, so to speak? Or
there are a number of groups. There's American Atheist is one. There's Americans United for Separation of State and Church. Mm-hmm. There's People for the American Way. Those are the three most noteworthy organizations, and also, of course, the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union. Those are the four organizations: American Atheists, PFAW, People for American Way, AU, Americans United, and ACLU. So let's see, American Atheists, ACLU, PFAW, and who was the other one? ACLU, AU, AA, and PFAW. Okay, so you know who they are.
There's so many.
Those are the four that keep an eye on people like Robertson and Falwell. But that's only one of the things that those groups do. Mm-hmm. Then they do other things. And again, that's yet another reason why there are good and valid reasons for these various groups to exist. I don't really care too much what Pat Robertson does, but I keep an eye, and National Atheist keeps an eye on what the American Center for Undermining Law and Justice does. Jay Sekulo's organization. They call themselves ACLJ, the American Center for Law and Justice, but I call them the American Center for Undermining Law and Justice because they try to undermine the Constitution. They try to undermine state-church separation in any way they can.
In 1991, actually, Pat Robertson said that this election would be theirs.
Would be what?
This election would be theirs, the Christian Coalition.
Oh, yeah. Wrong.
I find you right, luckily. Okay, when Bush, let me back up here. For those listeners just coming in, we are with Rob Sherman. He is is best known as being effective in civic activist movements in the Midwest. He's also founder of the National Atheist. Rob, when Bush takes office, what steps do you think he's going to try to take to undermine the separation of church and state? I mean, the listeners in the chat room here are typing, hey, it's in the Constitution here. How can he undermine that?
It's very simple. Appoint justices to the Supreme Court who will choose to interpret the Constitution in a manner that really was not intended. You know, if you've got the judges and if you've got the justices, you make the law, because justices and judges have the ability to ignore the law, to defy the law, or let me rephrase it, they have the power to do that sort of thing and to water down the law, water down enforcement. What he can do is, well, for example, you take a look at W's daddy, who appointed Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court, whose motto was "Onward, Christian Soldiers." Why is Clarence Thomas there? Well, because the Republicans are based, you know, many of them are racist. So they want to fill out. Well, you're black, I'm white. They wanted to fill up the black seat on the court with would Oreo be the right term? You know, black on the outside, white on the inside.
Haven't heard that one in a while, but yes.
Okay, they wanted to fill up that seat because they figure, well, it's unlikely that two blacks will be put on the Supreme Court. So if you get one black, and he's a guy who
I already know who you're talking about.
What's that?
I already have a few ideas of who would fit that bill for them.
Yeah, well, they've got somebody there now. Clarence Thomas is there to prevent somebody like Thurgood Marshall or Barbara Jordan or somebody who similarly stands up for the interests of black people rather than trying to interpret the Constitution in a manner that minimizes the effectiveness of equal rights.
Well, let's talk about your radio talk show.
Okay.
What is it? What do you talk about? How long have you been doing it, et cetera?
Oh, I've been doing radio shows for many years. I'm off the air right now. I don't have a show at the current time because I was doing so many things. I was doing the TV show, the radio show, liberal news and commentary, the travel agency, and National Atheist. That's 5 full-time jobs, and I just couldn't keep up with it all. So I dropped the radio show so I could try to focus on the other 4 things and keep those things going. And I may have to even drop one other forum, although I don't know which one. The TV show is basically I do it one day a month. It actually takes up a half day. I'm not sure I want to focus on National Atheists. I want that to be a major focus in the coming year. And liberal news and commentary takes up, it's pretty much a full-time proposition. The travel agency is a full-time proposition. So I don't know if I'll be going back to doing the radio show. That took up the most amount of my time, and I feel that I can have a more significant impact and reach more people on a national basis through webcasting, which is what I do with liberal news and commentary. And if you're looking for that, go to my website, robsherman.com, and you can click on liberal news and commentary right from there.
That's great. Will you soon be having any thing in real media format or streaming audio on your site?
Well, the answer to your question is that my cup is full to overflowing already, and what I need to do is to try to keep going what I have already before I add additional things. I would like to do it. I want to do that. I just, there just aren't enough hours in the day. Plus, in addition to those other 4 or 5 jobs that I have, and I'm a full-time father. I got to maintain the house, mow the lawn, trim the bushes, take out the garbage, get the groceries, be a father to my 2 children, be a husband to my wife. I don't know what to do first. Yeah,
I can surely relate to that. You mentioned that you're a frequent guest speaker in many different areas, educational institutions, civic organizations, and houses of worship. How did you manage, and how does that work? I can imagine an atheist activist speaking in a church.
How does it work? The reason they bring me to a church and the reason they bring me to many different schools is they want to find out what atheism is from the atheist perspective. They want to find out whether I am a threat to Christianity, am I out there fomenting atheism, or rather, am I doing what I'm really doing, which is what they want to inform their congregation or their student population, that what I'm really doing is saying that there is room amongst intelligent, enlightened individuals for a divergence of viewpoints about matters of faith. What I want, God believers, they're wrong, but, that's my opinion. They have their opinion. What I want, and what National Atheist tries to accomplish, is to make sure that the government maintains strict neutrality about matters of faith, that the government doesn't reward some people for being God believers in general or Christians in particular, and that the government doesn't penalize people for being atheists.
Okay. Are you a member of any other organizations?
Oh, yeah. I'm a member of lots of different organizations.
Let's narrow it down. How about atheist organizations are?
Well, no. See, when you're an officer of one organization, it wouldn't really be appropriate to be a member of another organization, because then they might think that, you're joining that organization or you're participating in that organization for the purpose of siphoning off their members into the organization for which you're an officer. I had been a member of American Atheists for 20 years. That membership continues in that I still send them the $20 or whatever it is a year, and I receive their magazines, but I don't go to their conventions anymore because it would create the appearance of a conflict of interest.
Interesting. Well, I guess we can talk about some of the political maybe groups you're part of, or what other groups are you a member of that are not atheistic?
I've been a member of a number of different groups, including the American Red Cross, where I've been a volunteer with their disaster services organization in the Chicago area it's been for most of my adult life, for 25 years, where when there's an apartment building that burns up, I make sure that I'm part of the group that makes sure that everybody has a place to stay, food to eat, clothes to wear, cots, blankets, toiletries. There have been a number of other organizations, civic organizations. I guess I'm a professional do-gooder, right? And proud of it. Bleeding heart liberal.
We have another question from Melkor in New Mexico. And what he wants to ask is, what do you think of Nader? It seems that Nader is much more in touch with secularists than Gore is.
Ralph Nader, one of my all-time heroes. I still call them Naderlights. Reggie, are you old enough to know what Naderlights are?
I have no idea.
When I was growing up, back in the 60s, automobiles in the 50s did not have side marker lights. So a little yellow light on the front side of the car and the red light on the rear side of the car. Ralph Nader went to Congress and insisted that automobile manufacturers be required to put these lights on the sides of the cars, because there were many collisions where you'd have one car broadsiding another car at night because they couldn't see it. They never even noticed that the car was there because there are no side markers.
That's right.
So Ralph Nader got a law passed that mandated, that required automobiles to have side markers. And back in 1961, they were called Nader lights. 62. They're called Nader lights because Ralph Nader got them put in. And I've always admired Ralph Nader for that and other things that he's done. However, this year, I'm very unhappy with him because Ralph Nader was one of two progressive candidates. Al Gore was the other progressive candidate. Well, there was also Bill Bradley. However, what we have is a primary system. You don't want to have a situation where the conservatives rally around one guy during the election and the liberals and the progressives split their vote between two candidates, because then you end up with a conservative. If 48% of the people wanted the conservative and 52% of the people wanted the progressive, But of the progressives, they split their vote between two candidates. You'll get 48% for George Bush, 47% for Al Gore, 6% for Ralph Nader, or something along those lines. And then instead of the majority of progressives and liberals getting one of our candidates in, we progressives will split our votes, and the minority candidate, the candidate that has been rejected by the majority of the people, will get in. So what Ralph Nader should have done is get into that Democratic primary, and then we could have selected between Gore or Nader or Bradley. I voted for Bradley, but once the primary is over, you either hang together or you hang separately. And progressives didn't hang together, so now we're going to hang separately for 4 years if Bush has his way.
Which does seem to be where this is all going to lead.
Well, maybe. I can't tell you.
Do you feel there's any foul play at all involved in any of this?
Any what?
Foul play, so to speak, involved in this election process.
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole idea. Catherine Harris is the Secretary of State. That's what the subject of Liberal News and Commentary has been this week. Catherine Harris is the Secretary of State of the state of Florida. It is her job to decide which votes to include in the final total and which votes to not include. Catherine Harris is also the co-chairman of the Bush-Cheney 2000 team in Florida. Little conflict of interest there.
Sounds like it's me.
So when she says, well, I'm not going to count the votes the Republicans are saying, well, the ballots have been counted and recounted. Well, the only ones that have been counted and recounted are the machine-readable ballots. But there are a lot of other ballots out there that the machines are unable to read. And which demographic group is most likely to have punched their ballot cards in a manner that the machines can't read? Well, it's the seniors. And most of the seniors in those counties that have punch cards, most of them are Democrats. So when Catherine Harris says she's not going to include hand-readable ballots in the final totals, she's not doing that as a fair and impartial adjudicator. She's doing that because she is exploiting her conflict of interest to aid one particular candidate instead of to fairly represent the will of the people. Al Gore got more votes throughout the country than W. Al Gore got more votes in the state of Florida than W did. If W wins Florida and the nation, it won't be because W got more votes in Florida. Rather, it'll be because the Secretary of State, who is the co-chairman of the Bush campaign, refused to allow the Gore ballots to be counted and included in. That's why they want. You think, you remember how W was saying, the difference between Gore and me is that he trusts Washington, I trust the people. Well, all of a sudden, now that there's a controversy going on, it's the Bush campaign that trusts Washington. They went to the Supreme Court in Washington, and it's the Gore campaign saying, hey, we trust the people. Let's find out how the people voted. And the Bush campaign is doing everything they possibly can to prevent the ballots from being counted, to prevent the ballots that the machines cannot read from being counted, because everybody knows that those ballots represent a lot of votes, enough votes for Gore that it'll put Gore over the top. Well,
I'm really glad you clarified some of those
it's
issues
my
involved.
job.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's why they invite me to churches and to schools. And once I do that, they say, we thought, you're an atheist. That means you represent evil. That means you represent immorality. Well, atheists are the leaders when it comes to ethical and honorable behavior. We do things right, not because some God guy, not because some make-believe deity parent is going to make hair grow in our palms or strike us with lightning, but rather because that's the way a good and decent person conducts himself. They want to know, well, where do atheists get their ethics from? Well, it's that basic law of physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. If you want others to treat you well, you need to treat others well. Atheists go one step beyond that. We treat others well in the hopes that our fine example will encourage others to treat us well. But even if it doesn't, at least we've done our part. Now, many religions, many religious cultures will incorporate our great atheistic philosophy about treating others well. They'll incorporate that into their religion, their culture. Jews and Christians call it the Golden Rule, but they took our philosophy and made it their own. They didn't invent it.
That's right. Secular philosophy, definitely.
You know, it's just like, you know, Christianity. Where does Christmas come from? It's the winter solstice celebration. They copped the winter solstice and made it Christmas. They copped the spring equinox and made that Easter. They copped a lot of different secular observances and turned it into their religious things. Even Halloween is the same thing.
Which is what I find quite odd. I believe that the Catholic Church actually pretty much invented that, right? And yet they're afraid of it, and they're the ones that started the whole thing.
Well, no, Halloween was started by the Wiccans.
Well, yeah, but of course the Catholics are the ones that picked up and made it evil, right?
And so the Catholics, the Christians made it All Saints Day.
Exactly, right.
To it's like counter programming. You see that on TV. If somebody comes up with a good idea, okay, they're going to make another one. Somebody opens up a pharmacy in a neighborhood. That's successful. Okay, somebody else opens up a pharmacy across the street. Say, hey, that works. Well, let's take a piece of that action.
Well, the good example down here, I'm sure you've heard of the Freaknik, as they call it down here.
No.
During Black College spring break, they call it a Freaknik.
Oh, okay.
And, the churches got involved, and they call it Churchnik.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying. Right. I got some more questions here, but I guess I'll start with, debating and speaking publicly. Do you do that? And
all the time.
All the time. When you debate, do you debate primarily dealing with church-state issues, or do you debate atheism versus theism, or? It's
primarily church-state separation issues.
Okay.
And only on rare occasions is it atheism versus Christianity or atheism versus God, because that's not my issue. I'm an atheist, but I'm not out there fomenting atheism. I'm out there demanding equal rights for atheists. Most people are not aware, and there's something else I speak about at the churches, the colleges, and high schools. Most people are not aware that in state after state in this country, the civil rights of law-abiding citizens has been canceled simply because those citizens are atheists. For example, in Arkansas, Article 1, Section 19 of the Arkansas Constitution states that no person who is an atheist is allowed to hold any government job or testify in court. That was challenged in federal court about 18 years ago, and I think the case was the name of the case was Flora v. White, somebody by the name of Flora versus I think the Attorney General or the governor at the time was somebody named White, and we lost. The federal court said we failed to see how that violates your rights. In a number of states, atheists are not allowed to either hold a government job, testify in court, serve as a juror, serve as a notary public, or hold elective office. And these are the types of things that my group is working to stop.
What do you think about the ACLU?
ACLU is a fine organization. But they're not very atheist friendly. But it varies from state to state. Okay. Here in the Chicago area, when it comes to atheist civil rights, well, Rob Sherman, who needs the ACLU, right? But just because somebody's a member of the ACLU doesn't mean that they are liberal with respect to all issues. So you might have Christians who are members of the ACLU who are all for rights for black people, or all for rights for gay people, but, atheists? Well, I don't know about that. They have to decide if, there are limits to how much money they can spend on these types of issues, and that's where they draw the line.
Mm. Well, you mentioned a lot about Christianity. How do you feel about other religions, and do you respect Christianity? I hear this a lot from Christians. They always ask me, do you respect my religion? Do you respect all these different religions? And if there is any religion are there any religions that you do like, or that you accept as being a good religion?
Let me put it to you this way.
Okay.
God is supposedly a supernatural entity, right?
Mm-hmm.
People who believe that there is a supernatural entity are, by definition, superstitious.
Okay.
Okay? I'm not superstitious. And, it's not a matter of respecting their religion.
Mm-hmm.
I respect their right to be religious.
Right.
I respect their right to select a theological perspective. But I'm convinced that they're wrong in regards to that their theological opinion is incorrect, that there is no God. God is make-believe. In every society and in every culture, man has created a God who looks like the people in that society, who acts like the people in that society, who has the personality attributes of the people in that society. That's why the God of the white males from the Middle East is, what do you know? It's a white male with a long flowing beard and long robes, just like them. And the gods from Africa are black, just like you. And the gods from the Far East are docile or passive, and they sit with their legs crossed and their arms folded. Just like, it's a personality attribute that the people like there. So God is whatever, when people say they believe in God, I say they make believe that there is a God. God is whatever people want to pretend that God is. God is make believe.
Wow. Well, Rob is that's
why they call me the Prince of Soundbites.
That's, something, that's one last thing I was going to ask you, actually, before I got you off here. Why exactly do they call you the Prince of Soundbites?
Well, because I have been involved in atheist civil rights activism for about 20 years. I am familiar with most of the issues. I'm familiar with the major issues, and I've been able to distill the position of atheists on these issues into very concise terms, which media types refer to as sound bites. So they'll ask me a complex question, and I'm able to respond in a usable term. And when I say usable, when you do a newspaper interview, I don't know if you've ever done one, but if you do a newspaper interview, they'll ask you a series of questions, and you might talk for 5 or 10 minutes, and they'll print 1 or 2 sentences.
Right.
Well, I know that. So if they ask me a question, I'll print the 1 or 2. I will respond with the 1 or 2 sentences as I would want it to appear in the paper, and recognizing that they will only publish 1 or 2 sentences. So I will have, from the experience, I will have the issue distilled and clarified down to a term that is publishable, that people can understand, people can relate to, and where people can recognize that atheists really are good people. We're just not superstitious.
That's right. Very good. Well, Rob, this ends our segment of the show tonight. I think we've talked for an hour or so, and I would really like to thank you for appearing on this show. You really talked about a lot of things that listeners needed to hear, and I know definitely I needed to hear as well. Do you have anything you would like to leave our listeners with before we sign off? Yes, thank you for having me on the show. I encourage listeners to support the Infidel Guy by listening to the show, and if you've got sponsors out there, patronizing the sponsors. Also, come to my website, robsherman.com. Matter of fact, what I recommend you do is, start the real audio thing for the Infidel
Guy's program. And while you're listening to the Infidel Guy on Real Audio, open up a separate window and you can be looking at robsherman.com. You can be looking at liberal news and commentary. I welcome your feedback from those of you in the audience. Go to my website, robsherman.com. There are ways to contact me either by phone, by email. There's a feedback thing. Take a look at liberal news and commentary. Go to nationalatheist.org. Take a look there and consider joining National Atheist. And if you don't want to join National Atheist and you're an atheist, then join one of the other groups. But be part of the solution instead of just staying on the sidelines.
Whining, as you say. Well, okay, I guess that'll do it.
Even if you just want to be a whiner, by joining one of these organizations, they can assist you in articulating your arguments and about a strategy for expressing your concerns in a way that will have the maximum impact with the amount of effort that you're willing to put into the project.
Right. Well, and I'll definitely put a link to the National Atheist. You have your own URL now for National Atheist, right? NationalAtheist.org or?
NationalAtheist.org is the website for National Atheists.
Okay.
RobSherman.com, you can find liberal news and commentary and information about the TV show there.
Well,
and you can also find out how to contact me through RobSherman.com.
That's great. Okay, thank you very much. Well, everyone, that's it for the Infidel Guy Real Audio Show. I thank you all for stopping by. Rob Sherman was our guest, the atheist activist and the founder of National Atheist. Tune in tomorrow at 8 p.m. And if you want to support the show, you know what to do. And also, if you have any guests that you can think of that you would like to appear on the show, just email me at infidelguy@aol.com. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
And thank you to everyone who decided to stick around and listen to some of my commentary toward the end. I am a little depressed right now and a little bit in tears. I did not know that Rob Sherman actually died in 2016. And I know that seems like a long time ago. Like, how didn't I know this? Well, Rob Sherman and I we considered ourselves friends at one point. And we conversed quite often. I would contact him through Facebook or text him. We would text each other off and on just to catch up with each other, see how we're doing. And he really was genuinely interested in trying to make this world a better place. Now, was he perfect? Of course not. And we disagreed about quite a bit. And I'll be honest, it was such a long time ago, I don't even remember what the heck it was that we disagreed about. But we fought, and there were some hang-ups. There were some times I hung up in his face. And we argued, but we always kept in contact. And I always kept that door open to see how he has evolved, even in his late 50s, right, to 60s, to early 60s. I still was hopeful that I would hear just some evolution in the way he saw some things. And his views did change somewhat over the years, but the National Atheist, as far as I can tell, as far as the actual organization, doesn't exist anymore. But anyway, I was broken up when, I said, how did I not know this? I mean, I knew he disappeared because he stopped talking to me. And I vaguely remember sending him a text and he didn't respond. And now when I reflect back on that, I remember now that it was right around that same time in 2016. Because Rob and I had a little bit of a tradition. We would contact each other on the holidays. It was so weird. And yeah, I thought Rob was just mad at me, still or whatever. Again, I can't even remember what it was, but we fought all the time. I remember because when we would call each other, we would be getting along so great, and then he would say something completely in my view at the time, like wacky. And I was wondering, like, why do you have this view? Like, what are you doing? You're going to ostracize people and our allies with this mentality. And I think this also went along with me growing over the years as the Infidel Guy interviewing so many people and hearing so many different perspectives, I started to change the way even I looked at some ideas and some thoughts. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not a theist in any stretch of the imagination, but I did learn over years. I became a more patient person, and I noticed that, I mean, separation of church and state is great, but I kept noticing the common litmus, right? That is really leading to what I viewed as the destruction or the prevention, really, of a prospering, liberal, informed scientific society. And that was that we're losing our critical thinking skills and scientific literacy. And so I found myself beginning to move towards that direction. And Rob was really still focused on the political side, which he should be. I mean, we need to be there, focused on that political side. But in my view, it seemed like Rob, in his early days, he was fighting for stuff that, and I got to be careful when I'm saying this. I got to be careful. I think everything that we do matters. I think anytime we need to fight and put ourselves in the forefront and say, hey, what about us? We need to make sure that when religious groups encroach in public spaces, on government dime, though, that we need to stand up. But if I recall slightly, I do remember that Rob and I kept getting a little bit of fights about some of those things. That line seemed not so defined to me in some places. And he was like, no, we got to stop them. We got to do this. I said, Rob, why are you focused on that? And I remember we used to get in fights about stuff like this all the time. I was like, why are you focusing on that? Like, and I remember saying, why don't you focus on this? Because I mean, oh, if you let them get a foothold, blah, blah, blah. I said, they got that one. It's like, why are you fighting that losing battle? Let's fight this one. This is the one that's going to impact society. And I think that might have been kind of what our rub was, really, is that some of the things I felt we were fighting for was just so small compared to some of the more bigger issues. And again, it's important that we all fight our own battles in our own way, as long as we are moving progressively. I totally believe that. But I guess whatever it was at that time, I remember feeling like I think Rob was hurting the movement more than helping at that time. But that was years later. That was years later when I was following up with him with some other things he was doing, and I just felt he was just jumping the ship or wrecking the ship, basically. It's like, Rob, what are you doing? Anyway, yeah, we got all these fights, and we were talking about family stuff, and we had some disagreements about that, and we had some issues about the law, and we got some debates about that and how to be a good citizen. And it was all over the place. But we agreed more on, I mean, obviously we agreed on a lot more than what we disagreed about. But I love that guy because he was always just entertaining. And even though I felt like he was off in a number of ways, he was always so freaking genuine, I felt. I mean, he was really speaking what he felt, believed, whatever his informed conscience told him, he followed. He went through, he followed through, and he was definitely a go-getter. And I think he did on this show. I didn't listen to the whole thing all the way through, probably like I should, but he mentioned being dealing with planes, but I didn't know how heavily involved he was as a plane enthusiast. And unfortunately, he passed away, and I hate the term passed away, but he died in a plane that he created on his own, at his house. I mean, that is impressive, or at least in part. And I was like, wow. And anyway, but yeah, I mean, he was definitely fighting for atheist rights, and again, the encroachment on religion and government, and fought really, really hard. And we lost a powerhouse in the movement, and a lot. And one thing about putting these old shows up here is that I'm realizing, right, we've lost so many. We've lost so many of our leaders. Before the atheism became the new atheism, and before free thought became twisted to mean just thinking differently, period, right? Back in the day when free thought was intermixed with skepticism, and how an atheism was a rational or logical kind of outgrowth of skepticism before all that got perverted and before there was all the, well, there was always infighting, especially with like American atheists, but it just seemed like, you know, 10, 15 years ago, it just got worse. It's like no one could agree on anything anymore. And it was like, I don't know. I begin to feel like, are we focusing on the wrong thing maybe then? I don't know. Anyway, I'm digressing and I'm ranting. Thanks for listening if you did this far out. If you have any comments, feel free to post those in the chat um, or in the comments there. You know, maybe I'm off base, but maybe some of you knew Rob. He always talked about his wife Celeste all the time. I remember, and I remember him talking about his kids as well, or a kid. I'm trying to remember, but I remember him talking about feeling as if he wasn't as close as he wanted to be. I remember him talking about that, and we had some really good talks. I remember him saying he felt like he was so busy, wrapped up in the activism, that he wasn't really in his own hobbies, that he wasn't close as he could be with, either Celeste, or his children. Yeah, I remember we had talks about some of that stuff like that. But but anyway, I miss you, Rob. Too bad you can't hear me say that, but I do. I got a feeling by the time I continue to do this, um, I'm going to continue to uh, feel a little down as I discover that people that I once had on the program and that I conversed with for years on end and through email and phone and watch them, help evolve our movement, how they're gone now. But anyway, all right. Thanks again, guys. I'm sorry. I'm just ranting. I'll see you next time.